All right, so we are starting our lecture for today. It is going to be, it says Intro to Intermediate JavaScript in our README, but really it's going to be a whole bunch of review, hopefully, from your pre-work, which you should have went through before starting this course. Um, so hopefully it's a good review. If not, well then I hope you catch up quickly today. The beginning parts of this README, go ahead and read in your own time. It's kind of giving background history and whatnot. We're not going to go through that. We're just going to start pretty much right here, our intro to JavaScript, and we're going to dive right in and take a look at all the different data types and structures and functions and whatnot that we're going to be working in with JavaScript. So in order to help us out, because excuse me, it's much easier to play with code than just read about it. You learn better when you type it yourself. We've got our VS Code open with just a regular JavaScript file ready for us to start working in. So first things first, variables. What's a variable? So give me a plain English definition.
Just a value that you can assign and change.
Yeah. Something that is a value, we can assign and change it. Not all of them are changed, some of them are, but it's a variable is something that holds a value. So it can hold a variety of values. A value doesn't just mean a number. A value can mean, all sorts of different data types. So in JavaScript, we typically have to declare our variables, right? Well, in every language, we have to declare our variables. JavaScript, we have two keywords that help us declare our variables. What is one keyword that will kind of signal that I'm declaring a variable? Let. Yep. Let is one of the more frequently used ones. Let and then number will be our variable name. And we'll assign that a value of 1. Var is also 1, but with let coming into play here, var is typically considered like deprecated and not used much anymore. Most often you're going to see let, but in old code bases you will see var. Um, let number equals 1. If I use a let, can I change the value of this number for my num variable? Yes. Let lets us further down go ahead and reassign the value to be something else. So up here, if we console log number, let's go ahead and we'll console log down there. How do I run this file? Does anybody know how to run a JavaScript file?
Type node and then the file name.
Node sample.js. All right, perfect. So we can see number equals 1 first, and then we were able to come in and reassign it to be 3. What happens if I do that? We get red squigglies. Why? What was I doing here?
There,
Is
is
Sorry.
it a
it an equal
conflict?
sign?
You tried to create the variable twice
Yeah,
with the same
yes,
name.
exactly. So by doing let again, it's signaling I'm trying to um, declare a new variable, but I've got the same name as the last one, so it won't work. We could do like number 3 and give it a new name, and then it will work. But that let is signaling that we are declaring a variable. If we don't have let in front of it, we are using this same variable here. We can't redeclare it. Once it's been declared, we can't redeclare it further down in the list. There are scoping issues too that we will look at, I think I don't know if we have it in the README, but definitely in my challenge this afternoon. We'll take a look at scoping with variables because it changes between global and local. And var is definitely got some interesting scoping. I am not 100% certain on the scope of var. I feel like you said, I think var can be seen everywhere, even before it's, I'm going to speak on things I don't know, but I think you can see the var even before it's declared, as long as it exists in the final. I can't remember for sure. One of them is like that. So most of the time, if we declare a variable, if I try to console log number here, let's see if that works. No. Why? Because cannot access num before initialization. So this variable does not exist before we declare it on line 2. So we cannot see the value up here. But I think with var you can. We can play with that, but we're not going to work with vars. We're not going to worry about that. We're going to work with lets and another one. So let, we cannot see this value before we declare it. Okay, so let's go on to the next one. Besides let, what other signal do we have in JavaScript to declare a variable? Const. So if we do a constant number equals 1, can I change this? No, that's right. No. Const is just like it sounds. It cannot be reassigned. So if we try to change it to something else, it's not going to work. Okay. See, this is a good example of using the up arrow to run my last command. I don't want to type in over and over this node example JavaScript. I'm just pushing the up arrow to run it again. Okay, so we can see here, throws an error, like it prints out the first one. So we have no problem just seeing this value and printing it out. But then on line 3, or line 9, sorry, which we can see right here, tells us what exactly line through the issue. When we try to say number equals 3, type error, assignment to constant variable. Can't do it. Can't change it. All right, cool. Any questions between const and let? There are different use cases for these, and we will see that as we do some examples this afternoon, probably. 99% of the time, I think you're going to use let. Very rarely do you use const. Wrong. All right. Does everybody know the shortcut for commenting out chunks of code? You see a head shaking yes. For those that don't know, how did I do that? How do I go back and forth between commenting out the chunk and not? Yeah, control. So on Windows, it's control and a slash. What is it on Mac? Command slash or whatever. I don't know what the. But anything, and I don't have to highlight it. I could just be on the line. And if I do control slash, again, this is on Windows, command, I think for Mac, you can all correct me if I'm wrong. It will just take the line you're on if you're just clicking on a line. So that's an easy way to comment in and out code. If I left this uncommented, every time I ran this file, it would do every single one of these console logs in my terminal. And I don't want that. If they are real Mac users, they will correct me. Let's see, Alt up and down, it will move, let's see. Yep, Alt up and down will move your line up and down. Take that as you will for whatever use case you want. Okay, so now next up, we're going right into functions. Y'all should be familiar with functions. You did a lot of pre-work, I believe, for doing challenges in JavaScript. I haven't seen the pre-work in a while. So how do I kind of, how am I declaring a function here?
With the word function.
Yes, exactly. So we let var or in const for our variable names for a function, simply just function. So we function, and then we have our, I'm just copying and pasting from the README. Well, no, I'm not going to copy and paste. We'll type it out. We have our function name. What is this naming convention here? Like, how did I decide what to capitalize and what not to?
Camel case.
Camel case, correct. That is the standard of practice for JavaScript. Camel case is lowercase first letter, uppercase for subsequent words. What do we use in Python? Even though this is JavaScript.
Snake case.
Snake case.
Yes, snake case. What's in snake case?
Hyphens
Underscores.
between words.
Yeah, underscores. Yep. So instead of using the capital letters, we would use underscores between. Okay, so we have a function, name of the function. What goes in here?
Default parameters.
We can have default parameters, but parameters, arguments, yes, arguments is what we'll use. I mean, I use interchangeably parameters as well, but these are what you're going to pass into the function and can use within the function. So we're going to have a first name being passed in and a last name. Okay, and of course, JavaScript is all about its curly brackets. So these curly brackets are holding the contents of the function within them. Now, how do I get something out of this function? Like if I run a function, how do I make sure that I have something at the end of it running?
A return
Print it to
statement.
the console.
We can print to the console too, yes, but we're gonna return. Return is what I'm looking for to give me something back once this function is done running. We don't have to have a return. You can just do side effects of just printing to the console. But if we want to have a value to work with afterwards, we do a return. So with this, as we can tell, because we need to, or we make our function names very descriptive and indicative of what this function is going to do, I'm pretty sure this function make full name is going to take in a first name and a last name and probably give us out a full name in return. Right? Pretty good guess. Name all your functions based on what they're going to do for you. I don't want to see just function, my funct1, my funct, name it meaningful names and your arguments that you're going to pass in or parameters. Look, if we hover over it, it says parameter. So you can use both interchangeably when speaking about this, but these also need to have descriptive names. Don't just name it arg. Nobody knows what that's supposed to be then, especially people who come in after you trying to run this function. So this is very descriptive. I know what this function is going to do without even reading what the function is going to do because of what it's named. So with this, we're just going to return first name. Now, what is this I'm doing here in this return?
Concatenating the variables with a space.
Yes, we're concatenating all this together. We're simply taking whatever is being passed in from the first name, and then this plus concatenates it with this space, and then another plus with the last name there. All right, so how do I run this function? Can I just run it in my terminal right now? Got to call it. Yeah, we got to call this function. So how do I call this function? And we'll do this in the file itself.
Oh, did you do one? Um,
So first I'm going to, no, we're not going to do variables right now, but in order to call this function, yeah, thank you, B, I need to call the function with the arguments passed in. So to call the function, you just use the function name, right? That's what I mean by call the function. And when we add the parentheses, which signify it's a function, right? We can see it tells us that it expects a first name and a last name, and that any is just like you can pass in whatever for that right here. And then we can see at the end, it outputs a string. So it even tells us what it's going to output as well. Handy little things that VS Code does for us. So let's pass in our first name and last name. Can I just do this? Is this going to work?
No, because you have to put it in quotes so it knows that it's a string.
Correct. What does it think these are right now?
Not functions, but
Variable names.
Yes,
variable.
thinks these are variables I'm grabbing from somewhere else. So let's make sure it knows they're strings that I'm passing in by wrapping it in quotes. Do I have to use double quotes?
No, no, right? No, I don't think so.
So you can use single quotes. However, there will be some instances when you're putting together strings and doing string interpolation when you're going to want to be careful about which quotes you use, be it double or single. So a lot of time, I'm not going to say one way is best than the other right now, but we'll see. I think we'll see different examples of that a little further down here. Okay, so we called a function here. We passed in two arguments into this function. So now, is this going to show anything if I run this file?
No, because
No.
there's no print statement in the function. So
Yeah.
it'll return it, but it won't do anything with it.
Exactly. Now it will return something, but it doesn't show it anywhere. It's not going to show anywhere. So let's add a console log so we can see this. We're going to wrap this whole function in a console log. Okay, so now when we run this, we should see the return of this function printed on our terminal. Okay. And we can see our function did just that. All right. Can I move this up top? Will this still work? Can I run this function up here before it's declared?
Yes.
Let's see. Yes. JavaScript's cool like that. It will see this within the file and find that function. So pretty handy. Just gotta make sure it exists. Later on, when we get into some Python stuff, you will not be able to do some willy-nilly moving around like this. But your terminal will tell you when you run across an error what exactly happens and why. All right, so let's move on from this. That's a function. It's weird, we visited function briefly. Now we're moving on to data types. So We have two different main data types in JavaScript. We have primitive and complex data types. When I'm talking primitive data types, I'm meaning, and this in the README too, I'm meaning stuff like strings, numbers, booleans, null, some of the easy, straightforward types of data you work with. Complex data types are other types. And let's see, that says you are dealing with memory address. It's not like a thing, it's pointing to a memory address instead. So you're gonna see like arrays and objects as a complex data type. Those are not just straightforward, like here's your response and data. It's actually pointing to a place in your computer memory that's storing that information. So let's run through some examples of both. We'll start with primitive data types, super easy. We've already done strings right here, right? We wrap in double quotes. Anything enclosed in single, double, or backticks are all strings. Okay, so we can see the double string. Now, here is an example of being careful on which quotes you use, because if we try to do single on the outside and double on the inside, I don't know. I mean, it works, but I don't know. I don't like it. Sometimes it gets weird. I guess it works. I probably wouldn't do it like this, but be careful about how your quotes are set up. Make sure you're opening and closing with the same ones. And then backticks. So backticks are fun because that lets us do this interpolation or interpolation. I don't know where the emphasis is on that word. So this lets us take either variables or other expressions and stick it in this string. So if we still had our number defined up here, let's make it a lead. I could have and then we can grab number and put it down here, right? So that's how string interpolation works. We do our $, curly brackets, and then we can grab values or expressions right there. And that is done specifically with backticks. If you try using a regular quote, it will not work, because backticks are the signal that it's going to be string interpolation. Oh, I just did the same thing again. Okay. All right. Easy. Strings are easy. Okay, next up we're going to, let's see. Do we need to deep dive into strings, or are we okay? This is interesting though in the README. So you can iterate through strings. Oh, that must be a protected name. It's deprecated. Okay. So here we are assigning a value to this constant, this variable name. We're making it Benjamin. Here, what is this? What is this square bracket 0? What does that mean?
Bracket notation to access something in the array and print it or return it or set it in this case.
Okay, yeah, that's to access a certain point in our array, but obviously this is not an array, this is a string. Logan, yes, correct. That was the word I'm looking for too. It's the index of your iterable. So when we say iterable, it is something that can be iterated through. You're most often going to iterate through arrays. Obviously, when you have like a big long array with a whole bunch of values, but you can also iterate through a string. And this is the index value. We all know index values start at 0 and count up from there. So the first letter is going to be a 0. The second one is 1, 2, so on. So if we try to point towards this variable name and grab the value out of that 0 index, right here, this is reassigning it. We're not just grabbing it. If we just console logged name 0, it would give us the little b. But here we are reassigning that value to be an uppercase B. It should be a big Benjamin then, shouldn't it? Oh, it's immutable. Yep, that's right.
Because of the cons, right?
Just because strings, you can't change strings.
Oh, okay,
You can split them and put them back together after you've done some things and making new, but the whole string itself is, yeah, it's immutable. So you can't do anything with this. So this example is showing while you want to rename it or reassign it to be that first index there or the index 0, you will not be able to, because we can see it didn't change anything. Full disclosure, I work in C# and PowerShell a lot, so some of these JavaScript peculiarities will be a reminder for me. So all good there, and thank y'all for speaking up when you know more than me on JavaScript. Okay, so even though they are immutable, like I said, you can actually work with them to create different values. And that's what the next example is. It's taking this Benjamin and it is adding on something else with it. So it's just adding on another portion of the string here. All right. Any questions on strings that I may or may not be able to answer right now? And your terminal will be your best friend and tell you what you can and can't do. Same with console logs. Throw bunches of console logs in there if you want to see what's happening to your variables. All right, next on, we can move to numbers. We're not going to go in depth with numbers. Just important to know there is no int or float distinction in JavaScript. They are all just numbers. So when we print the type of, I thought it would print. No, it wouldn't, because we don't have console log. So when we print the type of, so type of is going to tell us what data type follows after it. If you're thinking you would see int and float, no, you won't. We're going to see, I can't do print. Oh, console log. Oh, I swear I'm struggling. Okay, there we go, numbers. I'll move this back up to the top so you can see. Number. So, problem when you try to do math with integers and floats. Math is going to be a pain in the butt when you're doing some of these challenges. But there will be things we look at here in a second. We have some helpful methods to help you with your math, like math. What math POW? I don't know that one off the top of my head. And then math floor. So these kind of help when you have, especially math floor, when you have a decimal value here. Oh, powers of n. Okay, thank you. So math is an object, and these dot whatever, these are methods within this object that JavaScript has built in for you to use. If you're curious, you can control click, what is it? So you can control click on the method, and it will bring you to where in behind the scenes, behind in this math object in JavaScript, this this function or method. Method is just a function that it lives within a class. So this method slash function floor, this is what it's actually doing. So these are the parameters, or the parameter is taking. It's taking a number. It's specifying that it's a number. And then it's going to return a number. So it returns the natural logarithm base, and then you can keep, it's control click. You can keep clicking through some stuff to get, I thought it would happen, whatever. That is just a way you can dig behind the scenes if you're ever curious about what some of these built-in methods are doing, and where they're coming from. But again, that's a little bit bigger of a deep dive than you need to go. But these are built in that we can use. Math dot, and this is returns the value of a base expression to a specified power. So when we hover over, we see it takes in a number, and the X number, it takes the base value, and then the Y is the exponent that you're going to. So 3 to the 2 or whatever, 3 squared? No. Exponent value. Yeah, yeah. Oh my gosh. COVID brain has got me really. Okay. I hate math. You don't have to be good at math to code. Big key takeaway here. Math floor, again, is going to take your decimal value and just return the integer that is less than or equal to its numeric argument. So if we have a 5.23, it's going to drop down to the 5. Yes, yes, I am serious that you don't have to be good at math to code. I am really not great at math. I used to be okay with math, but not anymore. So numbers, that's all we're going to spend on numbers. In some of your challenges, you will start playing with numbers more and seeing that you'll need to use more math type stuff to help you deal with weird things like the decimals. Any questions on numbers right now? Okay, moving on to Booleans. Hopefully all very, just yell at me if this is way too simplified, but this is a 0 to nothing course. So unfortunately, those of you that do have the experience, you're going to have to get the 0 again. All right, Booleans are true or false, right? Easy. Yeah, true. What's that mean?
It maps
Or
to a value of 1.
This means
Like
or.
Oh, that in the middle, yeah.
Yes, yes, yeah. The two straight lines, that means or. So we just have that in the README. True or false. Okay, so I don't know why that said true. Okay. Short circuiting. You can read this stuff about Booleans here and how they work, and how they evaluate out. So this one will evaluate out to true, I guess, because we want true or false. Evaluates that. These are like really weird mind games sometimes with how these evaluate out. If we do 1 or false, this is supposed to give us 1. I hate Boolean mind tricks. It says it doesn't break. It treats one as a truthy, but instead of returning true, it returns the value. You can read the README about why all this is happening. I'm not going to try to lecture on this stuff, but we will go into equality commands here because these are important and fun with JavaScript. So in order for us to get out a Boolean out of an expression, we usually kind of compare two sides to each other, right? We compare one value to another value, and then the response to that comparison is going to be a Boolean most of the time. So if I do 1 equals 1, this is going to compare both of these values. What does the double equal sign mean?
The comparison between the two.
So it is a comparison. How strict of a comparison is it? Is it going to see this as a true expression or a false expression?
True.
This is going to be true, yes. But why? These are two very different data types, right? We have a number and a string.
Doesn't JavaScript make the assumption if
Yes.
you're only using the double equal?
Yep, double equal is kind of, in layman's terms, a loose equals. So like, I'm sure you meant these both are the same. I mean, they're both ones. Yeah, they're different data types, but they're loosely going to be the same. It's called an implicit type coercion. So it will go ahead and kind of rectify the differences between these data types and see these as equal. Good in some cases, but not good in others, because if I am looking for a very specific value, if I'm in a database and I've marked everything that's deleted is going to have a 1 value, and if it's not deleted, it's going to be a 0. I want to make sure that when I'm pulling values from that database, I'm just saying, you know what, if this value equals 1, I know these are deleted and I don't want to mess with it. So in that case, I don't want this loose, this little ambiguity here kind of trying to help me out, but not being so helpful. Meant to comment out. I want a bit more strict. So what if I do this? What is this? Is this going to be true, truthy or false, true or false?
False.
It's going to be false. And why?
Has a different data type.
Yep, this does not. So we said this used a implicit type coercion, so it kind of rectifies the differences between the two data types. This will not do that. This looks at the data types as well as the values. So a number is not equal to a string. So this is trying to say, does this equal this? Yes or no? No, it doesn't. So this is going to be false. So prefer to use this, the triple equals, unless you have a very specific reason to use this kind of loose equals, because it can cause some really weird behavior with the data type coercion there. All right, any questions on, so this is how you would typically get a Boolean out when comparing two values. So any questions on Booleans right now? Okay, next up we have undefined and null. These are the last two, what do we call these again? Primitive data types of JavaScript. So undefined, we're just going to look at the README for these. We're not going to actually put them in there. Way to represent something with no meaningful value yet. So right now we've declared a variable baby name. If we console log it, it will be undefined. So unassigned variables are undefined. Once we give it a value, then it will have a value in it, but for now it has nothing, it's undefined. Null is almost identical, but we use it to represent non-existent objects as opposed to an uninitiated variable. So we're going to talk about that in a second here with objects, but null is a little bit more complex. Still does the same thing where there's no value there, but it's representing an object instead. Okay, moving on to data types. We are almost there. Okay, complex data types. First one that you should be most familiar with is an array. These are kind of our bread and butter for holding a whole bunch of different values in one nice, easy to use data type. So arrays, can we, how do we define arrays? We have here const. Is this the only way to define an array?
No.
No. We can use let as well. And just doing, are you saying, Brian, we can do, okay, yeah. You have to do let or const to declare these before we can use them. So here we have our const. We view const to set up these days of the week. They're not going to change. We're not going to redeclare them or redefine the days of the week. They are what they are. So now, how do I grab a value out of this array? We did this before with our string. Since this is an iterable, we can iterate through this in array. How can I grab a value out of here? Like, what if I wanted to get Tuesday? Yes, we use the index. So how do I correct Nicholas? Days of the week is the name of the array. So we're saying, look at this array, square bracket, find the value of index 1. Okay, so because we have 0, 1, 2. Index always starts at 0, and we count up by 1. Days of the week, name of the array, grabbing that first one. So now let's console log this and make sure that gives us what we want. Should be putting semicolons at the end of everything. However, I mean, VS Code is smart enough. And I mean, JavaScript it's fine. You can leave it off. It'll run. But it's helpful to put them on the end because you might get some weird issues if you don't. So we'll do that. All right, we can see it did indeed grab Tuesday out of this array. Okay, so an array doesn't seem like a complex data type. However, under the hood, an array is an object. Oh, I said class earlier when we were looking at this math in JavaScript. I forget, in JavaScript, they're objects. Class is more for Python. But an object. Can anybody tell me like what an object is loosely in their own words?
Thing that accesses the memory.
Yeah, so we said, yeah, it's a thing that accesses a point in memory. Is an object like, does it hold just, do we access like different just values or a number? What is an object holding for us usually? What kind of data do we see in objects most of the time?
List arrays, things like that, dictionary.
Sorry, can you say that again? It's a little...
It's like list arrays or dictionaries, things like that.
Yeah. So dictionaries is a type of an object. How do we usually, let's see, I see lots of good things in the chat too. So yeah, objects will have methods with them. An object can pretty much hold anything. Yeah, that's true. Objects usually can hold whatever. And Scott, yes, that's a good point too. So a lot of times we will see key value pairs in our objects as well. So objects have a lot of different uses and options to them. So where do we want to start? Let's start. Okay, yeah, let's do. We won't get into the key value pairs yet. We'll keep going through the README like they do. We'll start with, so because arrays are actually a type of object, we heard earlier that there are methods you can use with these objects. We did this up above with the like power and the floor for this math thing. We can throw on a method that will kind of manipulate this object. So this example is, let's add, copy and paste this here. We take our object and then we use this method push. So we use this function that is built into this array object. So an array is an object and it has a lot of methods you can use. Push is one of the methods available to arrays. And as we see when we hover over it, it adds a new element to the end of this array and returns a new length of the array. So this array, because it's an object and it has this method available to us, yep, pop is another one. That's a good one. There's all sorts of different methods we can use, excuse me, to manipulate this object. So we're going to use our push, which will add Thursday into there. There is like a cat right outside my window. That is weird. Push back. I'm not sure. We can look at it if it has pushback. But now if we console log this, it should have manipulated our array because it's an object and use this method to go ahead and add Thursday into there. And we can see it did. So there are lots of different methods that can manipulate different things for you. In the README, they have this MDN reference, array, and let's see, here it shows all the different methods you can add on to an array. So we saw here's like push, pop, slice, sort, to reversed. These are all different ways you can manipulate your array object. Useful things to have when doing some algorithms. Okay, now we'll kind of take a little bit of a turn and start looking at when we talk about an object, what we typically think of, which is, I think dictionary is a Python term, isn't it? They're literally just called objects in JavaScript. But we're gonna look at
And then objects and dictionaries are basically the same thing, just Java. Okay, gotcha. All right.
yes, yeah. Dictionaries are a tool. Let me see if they're JavaScript. So there is no dedicated dictionary data type, but Python is a dictionary. So when we talk about dictionaries, it's the same thing. It's just two different languages and what they're called. In Python or in JavaScript, they are objects, but it's a dictionary if you want to think of the Python name. Okay, so most of the time we see them having key value pairs, and they can be nested. So this looks kind of crazy. This is a lot of stuff here, but it's simply a key and then the value for that key. And within this value, we could see the curly brackets are what indicate that it is an object and not an array. So we can see the value of this key has curly brackets, so it's another object within that. And we can see within that, it's a key and a value for each of these. And it can hold multiple, right? They're usually separated by commas. Objects can be kind of difficult to work with if you're a beginner, but you'll get more used to it as you go on. So we can make this simple. Let's just, I'm gonna add just okay. So here is a simple object, a key and a value, and we can just keep putting things in. Okay. So how we reference these values in an object is different than what we did with an array. With an array, we use an index, right? Because it's like, it's basically one dimension. Is that right? One dimensional? Yeah. I mean, that's not quite true. But it's a list of stuff, and we can just iterate through the list and grab each of those values. So it's easy. We do that with index. Objects are not held the same way. Yeah, you can definitely make a 2D array. That's why I stopped. It was like, no, that's not true. I was speaking wrong there. But with objects, since these don't hold values the same, they're like, we got keys instead of a location, I guess, within this. We reference it differently. We don't use an index. Also, just because I have name as the first item in this object, this first key in this object, does that mean this key will always be number 1 in this object? Or index 0? No. I see a lot of head shaking. No. Objects do not like save the place. Yeah, they're unordered. That's what I'm looking for. They are not ordered. So just because name is here right now doesn't mean name's always going to be the first thing in your object. Sometimes it could be the third. It's not ordered. So in order to reference it, we still use the brackets, but instead of an index, we grab the name of the key. So the keys are going to be this first item here. So if we want to find out the name, we'll put in, oh, I guess I have it. Yeah. Should be using a different thing. Name is not right. So if we have database targeting name, this should give us the value of Tom. Okay. It's a hash table. Dictionary is another way you might be easier to think of, and that's what Python is calling it. Kind of difficult to wrap your head around this until you get in there and start working it. Let's console log and make sure that we've got what we wanted. What am I console logging here to see if I grab the right thing?
The Tom entry variable.
Correct, because we are grabbing the value of name, but we're assigning it to a variable called Tom entry. We are almost done, I promise. I do have to put it in. What? Is it quotes? See, sometimes I forget how to do names or dictionaries as well. The first one was a number. So you just grabbed the number. In the README, they have numbers. Okay, let's make sure that's right. There we go. But if you're using a string, you have to make it an actual string. If I change this back to a number, then we can definitely just grab it by number. Oh. Okay. Any questions here on how we're grabbing items from our dictionary or our object?
Yeah, so would you have to create another variable in order to snatch information inside that object?
You don't have to. However, if I'm redoing this over and over again, you don't want to type more than you need to. So if you want to grab a value and use it repeatedly throughout your code, best practice is to assign it to a variable. However, I can just grab the value by referencing where it is in the object as well. I don't have to assign it to a variable to work with the value. But if I'm doing this over and over again, if I'm going to go to another place now and manipulate it, and I'm finding myself typing this again, no, don't type it more than once. Assign it to a variable to reuse it over and over again. That's a good question, though. All right, any questions on accessing the item in the object?
I do have a question. So the key values are immutables, right? And the values itself are mutables. You could change the values, but not the key values, right? Was it like that?
I will need to look at that. You can add keys to your dictionary, and I think you can remove keys too, I'm sure.
I mean, yeah,
But you can't
like,
change.
yeah,
Yeah,
like being immutable.
right. You
I
can't
just can't
change.
recall if it was a value or the key value. I think it was a key value, right?
So I can definitely change. We can change the values of items in the object. So that's a great thing here. So Tom entry is database name. Let's make that equal to my name now. And then let's console log again. So when I'm console logging, I'm going to be grabbing the name. Right here. You're supposed to be able to update it, aren't you? How do I got
Tom entry's constant, so you got to change it to let, I think. At your line 55.
because yeah. And I wonder if the database too, probably. Let's keep this. Okay, there we go. It's just that. Okay, perfect.
Ask me how many times I've screwed that up in the past 2 weeks.
The stinking declaring here. That's why I like Python. You don't have to think about it. However, yes. So our issue was we can read here assignment to a constant variable. on that line 57. So we were trying to make this a new value, and it wasn't working because we said constant. But if we just simply say, hey, take that database name, put it in, let it be this variable, we can update it. So now that name in the database is Tiffany instead of Tom.
Yeah, that's the value, but what about changing that? If you want to change the key value, let's say you want to name it different, can you change the key value? Because right there, you're changing the value itself with Tiffany.
Right.
Set.
I don't, let's see. I'm gonna look. Object keys, JavaScript. Pretty sure you can't change them. You can like add and delete.
I just want to make sure.
Yeah. This is getting a little the chances of you using this regularly are very slim. So you can create a new key and remove the old key, but it doesn't look like you can rename a key. There's some more in-depth things that are using property value. It's getting a little in-depth though. There's roundabout ways. Don't do that. Just make a key and leave it. So you can make everything do whatever you want for the most part, but it's in-depth ordeals to make that work. So okay, good question though. Yeah, everyone on your team will get mad. Yes. Oh my gosh, yes. Don't mess with dictionary objects, especially if it's coming from something called a database. The other thing down here is look, there's another way to grab string values. You can use dot syntax. So Tom entry dot name will give us if the key is a string. So we can do name, age, address. We can do a dot to get the value of that as well. Take these out where we reassign it. So now it should be Tom. Let's rerun it and make sure undefined. Tom entry, database, name. Is it because it was nested? I've messed it up now going off the README script. I'm trying to figure out how we do the dot with the, oh well, yeah, you can do it with database directly. And we can see it gets Tom that way. Perhaps Tom entry dot, nah, Tom entry was this value. So I couldn't do a dot because I was already grabbing the value here. If I, okay, that's why, yep. My brain's taking a minute to catch up. So in the README example, it grabs this 457, which is this right here, right? Which is what we're working with, basically. And you can grab then the string with the, why does that one get to be not in quotes? Sometimes JavaScript makes me mad. I don't know what that doesn't get to be in quotes. I'd have to look at that. Okay, so if we were to do Tom entry, which is Tom entry equals Tom, right? Because it's pulling the value of name. So Tom entry dot name is not a thing. Tom dot name is not a thing. That's why I was giving us undefined. Converts all keys to a string. But when I was doing this, it wouldn't let me grab it. So I don't know why it was doing that. Let's do age. And well, so I can't. Maybe. Age is not defined. I don't understand sometimes. There we go. Okay, so you can do it, but just when you call it, put it in strings. Or in quotes, put it in a quote. Crazy. Craziness. All right, so keys can just be left as strings, but just make sure to reference it as a string. Okay, we can also reassign a key's value. We did that before. We did that with my name. We grabbed the entry and then just changed the value of it equals whatever new value. Okay, any other questions on that? Oh my gosh, we still have so much more to go through. I thought this would go fast. Okay, next up is functions. Does anybody need another break or are we gonna just push through to the end? Functions is the last section we have here. Okay, then we'll just keep pushing through unless if somebody yells at me. Go ahead and just copy this all out so it doesn't mess with what we're logging down here. Okay, so functions and data types, what are we doing here? Again, looking at the README, push through it. Yeah, we're gonna push through it. And feel free if y'all need to step away for something, go ahead. Especially if you're confident in your JavaScript skills, that's fine. Most important reason to distinguish between classes of data types is how the function will consider them when passed in as a variable. So you can read all this pass by value stuff, that's fine. Basically, we need to use the correct data type for how we expect this function to run. Pass by reference, the opposite is true for complex data types. Let's see, they are not copied when passed into a function, only their memory address is copied. Yeah, you can look at all that stuff. Okay, learning about this pass by value, pass by reference, but just make sure what you're passing into your function works for what you're actually going to be doing with it. Okay, if else. If else and a ternary operator. So we are likely already familiar with if else, right? If we do this one thing, or if this one thing is true, do this, else do something else. Okay. So let's look at the example from the README. So we have declaring a variable. It's a constant. We can't change this age. Their age is 24. Declaring another variable with let, which can be changed. So let can drink. So if age is less than 21, can drink equals nope. Else can drink equals yeah. What do we expect this function to return, or the not function, but I guess more or less this if else statement to return. It will return a yep. Yep, we are drinking because the age, so it evaluates this in the if statement first, right? So if age is less than 21, our age is 24. So 24 is, so if this is true, do this first thing. So 24 is less than 21. No, that's false. So then we go to the else statement, can drink equals yep. So if else statements can do things and don't have to evaluate. So this one we evaluated, right? We returned a Boolean. We're comparing values and we're saying true or false. So if true or false. So if this is true, do this first thing. Otherwise, we can just, if we don't have to, let's see. So something like the below won't work. I don't want to show you what won't work. Oh, okay. I see what it's saying. I'm sorry. So this doesn't return a value or evaluate to anything. It just kind of gives us, it establishes a value in a variable, right? If we come down here and we do this, what is this trying to do?
Like what the intent is?
Yeah, what is the intent that of this setup here?
Probably to answer a question, like can this person drink? And they put in an age. So then you're returning it, but you're not actually printing it and telling the user again.
Yeah, and it looks like it's trying to save that in this variable, right? So it's trying to have this expression evaluate out into this variable. Can't do that though. It doesn't evaluate out into anything. It worked above because we were just changing the value of a different variable with our expression. But we can't like try to say can drink equals the response of all this. That's not how that works. It's not like a function, you know, we can assign a function to can drink because functions return a value. But this expression does not. This returns nope, I guess, but it's not gonna, I mean, it does return, but it doesn't at the same time. It doesn't evaluate out like you would think it would.
And so with this one, then it returns just like a string, whatever you want it to, and doesn't really do any type of calculation or anything. You
Yeah,
know,
so
okay.
this doesn't work, like, because it's going to try to assign a return to this variable, but it just doesn't work like that.
Gotcha.
So we're going to look at what does work and why it works. So sometimes we want to assign to the variable, right? So here we are kind of in a roundabout way. We declare it and then we change the value explicitly, or what is it, implicit? I forget the name of this coding. We go through line by line and just update it based on that. But we can also do something called a ternary to help it. Is it because can drink is constant in the second? Yeah, I mean, I'm sure that maybe has something to do with it. I'm not 100% sure. That's more advanced JavaScript than I know at this point. But our goal is we want this constant can drink to give us like either a nope or a yep, but we don't want to We don't want to like type it all out like this. I want to make it a little neater looking than that, a little more condensed. So we can use a ternary operator. We're going to type it out and go through it. Have we seen these in the pre-work? Ternary operators, we'll see. Age is less than 21, question mark? If it is, then nope. Otherwise, yep. Okay, so ternary, I like to ask it just like as a straight up question to myself. You heard me do my little questioning voice. Literally just reads across how you would expect it to. So we evaluate this first. Is the age less than 21? If it's true, so if that evaluates out to true, it's going to be the first response. Nope. Then this little colon means if it's not, otherwise, else, it'll return a yep. So this one does assign it nicely to this variable in one line. It's doing this, but in the right way, and it's doing this in a more condensed way. So this is useful if you're trying to go between like an if-else return, and you want to assign it to a variable. It's a nice compact way to do this. I love ternaries. And you just ask yourself a question of, is this true? Do this, otherwise do that. So just like our if-else. Sorry if that was confusing. Is anybody confused, need more explanation, or are we good with ternaries? By all means, if you want to just keep doing this full if statements, if else statements, go ahead. Nothing wrong with that. It's more readable for some people, so nothing wrong with it. There's always the argument of readable versus what is the word? Efficient, functional, I guess. Yeah, more functional. So you can do a lot of one-liners and fancy things, but is it readable? Probably not. Depends on your use for these functions. Okay, iteration through loops. This is going to be the last review we do. What is the most common type of loop we're using in JavaScript?
For loop.
Yep, for loop. Good. We have more loops we will look at, but right now we're talking about just for loops. Let's see. So JavaScript loops are set up for, and then you have all this jazz in here, right? You have to do, you have to do, I am going on empty here. You're declaring your variable for your for loop, let I equal 0. You start at index 0, right? And this is for how long you do this, like as long as I is less than the length of the array that you're iterating through, or whatever iterable, then I plus plus means, step forward one by one. It's going to be pretty much in all your JavaScript for loops. Let I equal 0, start at the beginning, I is less than the length of the iterable, and then increment through it forward one at a time. And here, this will just print every number. I is what? In this for loop, what does I signify?
Counter.
A counter, yep. It is also the index position in your iterable. So it is, if we're going through here, it's going to be where you're at that time in the for loop. So of course we start at 0. So for the first iteration through this for loop, my numbers I is going to be 0 because that's what the first one is. So this will print out 0. And then we iterate forward 1. Now we're on 1. So the next one will be is 1. My numbers will print out the 1 index and so on. So it's where you're at in the index position at that time in the iterable.
You describe the second portion of that for statement on the second line, so right after the colon. Just the item, like I get the I as the index, so meaning like the 0 index, less than my numbers in the line, which would be 2, and we do 0, 1, 2. But the I plus plus, so if the index is less than the length of what's this, array? Is that the right thing? Yeah. That the index position is less than the length of the array, the length of the array, which is 2, then I plus plus. Then continue going to the next
Yep.
index. Okay, gotcha.
Exactly, 100%. So this is just get used to throwing this in as is. Of course, you change the name of whatever variable is holding your iterable in, but this is going to be standard for every single iteration from
To make it loop
through the, yes, to make it loop
okay.
through the whole thing.
The whole array. Okay,
Yep.
gotcha.
There are different ways to iterate through, by skipping stuff too, and changing, the length, but this is standard for from start to end of my whole iterable object, go through it all. Okay, and then let's see. Now we have another loop that we're going to look at. What's another one? So we have our 4 iterating through. We have another 4. Let's see. For each. No, we're not going to do a for each yet.
4 of.
Let's see. Yeah, we'll do a 4 of. That's what the README is going to. I didn't not look at these last functions before we got here. Okay, so this is a different way to do this. This is saying it would be nice if it was just understood that this was an array and we just wanted to see everything once. So this is doing the same thing. We want to see everything once, but it's a very verbose way to put this. It would be easy if we could just say, hey, for everything in this array, let's iterate through. So for every, and then the structure here is let some variable name can be anything you want. This name, this variable can be anything you want. Typically, you kind of associate it with what's contained in the array. So this is a number array. These are numbers. So let's say let number. So for every number of my numbers of this array. Again, we can make this whatever we want, whatever variable name we want. This has to be the name of the iterable you're going through. Okay. So this assigns each of these, instead of being an index location now, it's just going to be number. So we don't have to say like numbers I. This is just going to be number. And that's why we are able to console log just number instead of doing my numbers I. So it's another way to kind of do the same thing, hitting each value through the array. For another for loop, let number of whatever array you have. Okay. Ruby says, oh,
You're saying, yeah, so you're saying that this here, the 4, the second standing here, does the exact same thing that the one before does?
Yes.
Gotcha.
Yep. This way is a little bit more detailed on how you can iterate through, but if you set it up like we did, then it's the same. But if you simply just want to hit each item in your iterable, you can do a for of is what they call this. So that's going to hit, and we can do the same with a string. We can have C, D, E, and we can say for letter of, and we would probably change this to be my letters. And we're going to print out each letter. Oh, and we can see it iterates through the strings as well.
And when it hits, so on the statement before, right, it just says keep going until you hit the length of the string. Is that when you're saying letter of my letter, is it kind of like automatic without requests? Meaning like, okay, you know, iterate through each letter of my letters until the end of the length of the array. Is that saying the same thing? It's kind of like automatically stated in there.
Mm-hmm. Yep.
Okay,
Yep.
gotcha.
This is just a nice built-in syntax that automatically takes the whole length of whatever iterable.
Okay.
Yeah, all right. Lastly, objects. Objects can be iterated through as well. We can do a for of in our objects. So let's take a look at the README one. Going back to our database where we had this nested key value pairs. Oh, I don't want that on here. So we have a for of, again, let entry of object dot entries database. What is this? Is object dot entries.
So a method?
Yep. So it is a method and it's a built-in method. Let's see, let's hover over. Where can we see? I guess so. If we just hover over it, it shows us what all the entries are in here. And yes, it allows you to iterate over an object, but it's a built-in method that allows you to iterate. So these entries, and we can see are everything that is being displayed here because it's looking at this database object and it's grabbing what entries are in there. Let's see. We're going to say that keys are the 0 index entry and values are the 1 index in the entry. So then when I console log key and value, what do we expect to print out here? What would one of these entries look like? Let's start with that. So what do we think an entry looks like in this object entries database if we're iterating through a database?
Yeah, first like 457 and then 57782.
Okay, so this would be an entry, but the whole thing here. So this is one entry because it's key value pairs. And then this is another entry. So as we iterate through each entry of these entries, so this is one entry, the second entry, let's look at the first one. So for this entry, what am I going to see when I console log key value?
So if it's going, it will push out everything that's on the that's listed as the value of that entry. So like Kent and Scott were saying, name and age.
Yeah, so I see Scott also posted in, and I'm sure probably a few more posted above. I haven't scrolled up, but so the key is entry index 0. So if we have this this whole thing's our entry, our key value. Okay, let's just I'm getting tired here. So our this is the key. That's the index 0 of this entry is this first item here. And then the value is going to be the second index of that, or index 1 of this item. So key is 457. The value is that whole object attached to it. Okay, so we see how that grabbed each of the entries. So when you do, and again, we can name this whatever, but when we do an entry in an object, the value or the item at index 0 is going to be the key, and the value is going to be the 1 at index 1.
And this is where if we wanted to take it the one step further, we could then add onto it. So if we wanted to get age, we could set, entry bracket 1 bracket 2, or no, 1 again.
Okay, so let's do age. Okay, so if we've got for each entry, the key is going to be 0, and then the value is the second half. So we've got the value here. And then we want to target the age in the value. How can I do that?
Is it 0 again? Because the count started over.
So the value is this whole thing here. So the value is going to be name Tom, age 34. So if we did 0,
We would get name.
oh, let me change. Are we going for name? Let me change it to name then. Let's see, console log, and then we'll do best thing to do if we're ever unsure is just to console log and see what we get and kind of reason why. Okay, so that didn't give us anything. Wonder if we do that. So remember how we said we can access the strings, the values of keys that are strings by doing the dot notation? So that is what I did there. Otherwise, what else can we do if we don't use the dot notation, if we want to stay in this bracket? How can I access the name? We just reference it directly by the key name. We get the same thing. So those are the two ways to grab that, because this was a whole object again. When we assigned value equals that entry, since it's nested, we got a whole nother object. So when we grabbed we're not using a built-in method like this to grab each of the entries. Now we have to do the more, oh, what do I want to say? We have to get the values the way we learned above on how to access object values. This built-in entry makes it, or built-in object entries makes it so we can grab this index 0 and index 1. Yes, Janae.
Yeah, I just want to make sure I'm following correctly. So because we put constant value entry 1, it knew to go to that second bracket and give us the name Sally versus the name Tom, right?
So good question. Let's take a look. So what is each entry here in our database? In this for loop, we're doing let entry of these entries. So what would be one entry in our database?
I mean, in the
457.
position entry 1.
We're going back and we're just simply what is an entry? Let's not look at the values of it yet. Let's just, what's an entry?
It's like 457 and 57,782.
Yes, so these each are entries. Okay, so for entry of this database, so since it's a for loop, we're going to start off in 457. Okay, so first now we have let this entry, which is 457 of this database. Now we come down and assign the key, which entry index 0. So if we're just looking at this first one, entry index 0 is 457. The value is entry index 1. So in this, we're still in this entry here. Now we pull the nested object. Name is now going to be that value, which was the nested object, and then the value name from that nested object. And then we're printing that on the screen. Now we're done with this one. We've already went through and assigned all these values in this entry. Now it's going to move on to the second entry because we're doing a for loop through. So now in the second entry, we go through and do the same thing. Key equals entry 0. So that's going to be that number there. Value is index 1, which is this here. And then name is going to be that this value and then name, because we want the value from that. So I forgot your original question, but it iterated through. So it looked at this first entry first, and then in the second time through this loop, it's jumped down to the next entry and did all the assignments here. Does that kind of answer, or are you still confused?
Yeah, so because it's a for loop, it automatically knew once we were done with that first set to go do the same thing with the second set.
Exactly. Yep.
Oh.
And that is how we iterate through our objects. Okay, that is the lecture. Stepped through a lot more than I thought we were going to. Any questions before I stop recording and we look at our first assignment? Okay, let me stop recording. Once I get this, here we go. Okay.